my Speaker of the House of Delegates in Virginia, Kirk, Republican from Colonial Heights, former basketball coach, my mentor in coaching, taught me the jump press, and now my team at St. Matthew's High School, beating everybody, 7-1. We got one team to beat in the tournament. St. John's, we're going to beat them too. We're crushing everybody. Nobody can even prepare for us. It's an exciting thing. But we're not here to talk about my basketball team, although I'd love to. We're here to talk about Kirk Cox and his agenda. Mr. Speaker, great to have you, sir.
John, it's great to be with you and great to hear about your basketball team.
Because you're my mentor. You taught me this defense. And now what we turned it into, I've got 10 very fast players, not a lot of height, and we really worked our tails off. But we run a pure Westhead transition offense. And we take 95 shots a game. We get a shot off within 12 seconds every possession. 30% of them are threes. We're a fun team to watch. We press the entire game. We double team. Yeah, we give up some easy baskets, and we substitute 5 players every 90 seconds. I mean, if we're within 10 in the fourth quarter, you can't beat us because everybody else on the other team is completely gassed. So it's fun.
Yeah, I used to tell my kids in the fourth quarter, I ran sort of the same stuff, and I look over there, they're dying. There's no way they can hang with you. And when the kids buy into that, it's just fun. It's just, and they all get to play, and they love running. And like I said, we sort of laughed. We tried to set up. It was really tough because we didn't have a great setup offense. If we were setting up, we were in trouble.
That's the same thing. I mean, we play teams that, they play a 2-3 zone. They run, double screen, 19 passes, offense, half-court offense, triangle, try to post up. If we get caught in that game, we're dead. So the zones don't even matter because we're down there shooting before the zone sets up, and we get about 30 offensive rebounds a game. But enough about that. I want everybody to know that Kirk Cox taught me everything I know about this offense and defense, and so I appreciate it. Kirk, let's get to your first week here as Speaker of the House. Lots going on, hitting the gavel. How's it been?
John, I think it was a good first week. I think there are 2 or 3 clear points. I mean, we certainly lost seats, so there's no getting around that. I make the point to people all the time that we're still in the majority, and that's very important. And we've done some things that I think our citizens will like, especially some transparency issues. And I think we've been fair but firmly in control. So, for example, we've always had proportional representation on committees. We extended that to subcommittees. One of the things that we've looked at for a few years is recorded votes in subcommittees. We did that. I think that's important. We're live streaming committees. We've done some things in previous years to make sure that the public can see the budget. We can't vote on it until 48 hours after it comes out. So we're really trying to work on that. We want people to know that we want them engaged. Having said that, the big change I made was the Rules Committee, which really didn't play much of a function before, and I have sort of made that more of a traffic cop, which I think is a very important historical function if you look at other bodies. It actually goes, believe it or not, all the way back to Aristotle in the 4th century. Mm-hmm. But that's important because I think it allows us to put key bills in rules, help negotiate them, control the timing. And so those are probably 2 of the biggest changes.
If you look at your leadership team, how are you getting along with David Toscano and the Democrats in leadership? I mean, is there dialogue going on? Are you guys talking to each other on a regular basis, or is it more still a political battle?
Well, it's a little bit of both, and that's the way it's always somewhat going to be. I will say, 2 parties have distinct philosophies, so you need to work together. I mean, we've got veterans issues and opioids, but that's the same token, and I think you see this both on the national level. You got to believe in something, so you can't roll over on regulatory reform and responsible low-cost government. I mean, why are you there if you're going to do that? So, we've had some negotiations that got us to, I think, kick off pretty good. I feel like the Republicans particularly have a good relationship with the Black Caucus. And so, obviously, we've had a lot of talks with them. I think there's some issues we can work on together there. So, for the most part, we are, I think, doing pretty good. Just always going to have some contention. And that's not all bad. I mean, there needs to be a little bit of both, I would say, a little bit of balance.
So let's talk about redistricting and how that plays out. Now, what's your vision for that? Do you see that as part of your playbook, or do you think that now that you got the majority, it's going to stay as it is?
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, I've always said you're going to have to convince me that redistricting reform really does anything. It's traditionally been a function of the legislature. As you know, we draw, and historically the Founding Fathers, we've drawn lines and state legislative lines. And once again, if you look at independent commissions across the country, it depends a lot on how they're formed. I mean, a lot of times you have 7 or 8 people. They almost become the kingmakers. So let's say, for example, that you have 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, and an independent, or however you do it, then you really put power into certain people's hands because it is. So it's not the panacea, number one, that a lot of people think it is. I think there are probably some smart reforms you can do, and you need to look at all of that. But I just want to be careful that people don't see that as, that's suddenly everything's going to be wonderful if you do redistricting reform. I mean, for example, some people want to make every, district competitive. But, for example, how do you do that in Arlington and Alexandria? I mean, that is just a swath of liberal votes. And frankly, now Southwest Virginia, those are, as you know, President Trump did tremendously well there. Not only that, Republicans do well there. So you can't create some of the things I think people think you can create.
Well, yes. I mean, especially when you look at Northern Virginia, that's a good argument you make. I mean, there's nothing to do to make a lot of these districts competitive. Let's get to the shutdown. How was your caucus reaction to that? And, we estimated, I think some economists estimated that the one day cost the country $100 million, but a bigger impact on Virginia. Are you glad it's over?
I'm very glad it's over. It really, affects Virginia, as very directly with, a military presence, et cetera. So I'm glad it's over. It is, certainly, I think if you look at, what happened, I was sort of amazed that the Democrats were willing to shut down the government to allow 700,000 people, mainly, obviously, here illegally, to stay in the country. But having said even that, though, they've got to come up with a better budgeting process, John. I mean, you just can't keep having CRs. We have a balanced budget amendment. We sort of know we have to get our budget done. And so I would just say that whole process has to be worked on both sides, because we just can't keep having this happen. I mean, you've made the point many times, the economy's clicking along. The tax cuts, I think, are going to be revolutionary. I love the regulatory reform, but you can throw all that out the window, frankly, if you have a month or 2 shutdown. So they've got to really look at reforming their process.
Well, you sound like Congressman Rob Whitman, who's been saying that forever, that they shouldn't go home until the budget is actually done and presented to the president. That never happens. The CRs go on and on and on in perpetuity, and you're right about that. We are with Virginia Speaker of the House of Delegates, Kirk Cox, Republican from Colonial Heights, which is a suburb out of Richmond. Mr. Speaker, let's get to a couple of the big issues coming up. Yesterday, the governor calling for raises for Virginia teacher salaries. Are you guys going to put that in the budget? Have you talked to him? How does that work?
Well, the current budget that Governor McCall has put in has a second-year pay raise for teachers and state employees, et cetera. And my guess is, that will stay in the budget because, if you sort of look historically, and I think, look, I taught for 30 years, so you don't always expect your pay to be what it would be in the private sector, but we needed to remain competitive. Right. So I think we'll very much look at salaries, but we got to be smart on other things, though. If you're going to do things like salaries, you have to really make sure that you don't have a lot of other programs that are siphoning away the money. The big thing we have to do in K-12 is the money's got to go in the classroom. And so all the other extra programs that sometimes the Democrats want to add on to, you can't have both. You can't keep expanding some of those types of programs, whether it be at-risk add-on programs, et cetera. What I really like what we've done, John, is we've returned about 30-some% of the lottery money directly to localities to say, you use that for what you think is effective. But we're going to stop mandating and coming up with all this variety of programs on the state level that probably don't work for your localities. I think it's got to be a combination of, we got to have some reform in that system, et cetera.
All right, so that's in there. So you're going to be negotiating that. Let's get to some of these marijuana-related bills, Mr. Speaker, especially those centered around cannabis oils. I know there's one that Dr. Siobhan Tunovitt has put in the Senate, SB 795, which would allow the doctor to prescribe these. There's going to be some others in the House. What is leadership's basic position on maybe providing doctors in Virginia with the opportunity to prescribe cannabis oils and other marijuana-related products for medicinal purposes?
Leadership, John, is really not taking a position on that issue. I mean, obviously, with issues like Medicaid expansion or transparency, the budget, we generally, try to have caucus meetings and talk about what we, what we believe in. Not that that's not a major issue. That's a very important issue. But I think those types of issues, we've generally sort of left it up to our membership to sort of, because as you know, there's a wide variety of belief on that. I think
right.
For some of the ones for medicinal purposes, I think obviously you're seeing folks move towards some of that's a good idea. When you get to decriminalization and that type of thing, then I think you get real splits.
Right.
Because you have sort of a libertarian bent, if I could, and I think you see that even some of the national legislative conferences that are more conservative. And then you still got, for lack of a better word, the law and order piece, and is that a gateway drug, et cetera. So,
right.
I would say you'll probably see more and more in the realm of for medicinal use, but I don't know how much you'll see beyond that, would be my guess. But that is not something we sort of, put our thumb on the scale on.
All right, let's get to Medicaid expansion. Terry McAuliffe put that, as you know, in his budget. Again, the VHHA, the Virginia Health and Hospital Association, has said that they're willing to find a way to fund the gap in expanding Medicaid from the federal government, whatever that gap is. They've outlined several processes to do that. Mike Pence, very conservative vice president, when he was governor of Indiana, he expanded it. That's working fine. No complaints there. And then what really got me is when the Republicans in Congress were attempting to repeal and replace Obamacare, which my whole argument in opposition to Medicaid expansion was that Obamacare was going to go away and then Virginia would be on the hook and it would bankrupt the state. Well, the Republicans were funding the states that expanded Medicare in perpetuity and then screwing states like ours that did the right thing financially by giving them a smaller block grant. So what is the argument now not to expand Medicaid? That's my question.
I think you can look at the CHIP program, the Children's Health Insurance Program, and of course, as you know, that was really in danger. If that would have not been included in this latest CR, then I think various estimates it could have cost us $70 or $80 million. So CHIP is one of the most popular, probably, programs there is. And so I think, once again, it shows you, will the federal government fund this stuff in the out years? Our biggest problem with it is the soaring costs in the current program. When you look at just regular Medicaid, it's going to cost us, another $600 million this year. And I think the estimates of that are way low. That's with 2 or 4% growth, and it's going to grow more than that. I think you got a problem with the false promise of free federal money. And I think there are better ways to strengthen the health care safety net. Having said all that, you referenced the Indiana plan, but remember that plan is, pretty conservative in that, they, some of the waivers with what they have on cost sharing and work requirements, with some of the states are pushing. And I think the big thing would be if would you get any of that in negotiation? I mean, I think that Governor Northam has talked about reform, but is it going to be real reform? So you're going to be able to get some of the super waivers that allow you some of that flexibility. You're going to be able to get a work requirement and those types of things. And so that's going to be the challenge. The challenge is going to be in 5 years, I think, some of these states who just expanded Medicaid, I really mean this, I think are going to have budgets where they're going to have to cut K-12 and higher ed because the money's just not going to be there.
So would you be in favor of some sort of an Indiana-style Medicaid expansion where they did get the waivers and they did find a way to make it more of a marketplace-based system? Is that something that leadership might be open to debating?
Well, we'll have to discuss that. I mean, I'm not ready to commit to that, but I would say that you would have to have, I think from a Republican standpoint, if you ever looked at that and were convinced that you could go forward, you would have to have something like that. And once again, I'm not sure that is, and once again, don't forget you have to apply for the waiver. So one of the problem is that, this is trust but verify. So let's say that you ask for the waivers, and I can get those into October 1st, probably, 2018. And then it is the Democrats, which I think they are, where they demand the money early.
Right.
And, it's like Metro up in Northern Virginia. Is it reform first, which you would hope, and then a negotiation on the money?
Right.
And so I think if you did anything, once again, you would have to ask for the waivers, have the waivers approved, the work requirement approved, because now you have a Trump administration that will do that, John.
Right.
If you go back traditionally to some of these other states, they were really gambling because the Obama administration, and remember, this was part of our discussion, we never approved any of the waivers.
Right.
And so, that's in the mix. I think we'll have a much favorable administration. We're going to have to look at that.
All right, so I just want to get your take on an issue that's in the Senate because it's gotten a lot of play, and that is the Dick Saslow, the Godfather, basically telling Bill Stanley they're not going to fund his Patrick Henry hospital if he doesn't vote for Medicaid expansion. I mean, I get hardball tactics, but man, when you hold up a hospital, the hostage that's in a rural area in somebody's district, I mean, I believe in partisanship and you got to fight, but man, don't you think that was a little over the top?
Yeah, it really was. And you have a similar House bill that's actually going through. And so I think the Democrats in the House realize that's a losing argument.
Yeah, I think so.
Especially if you're arguing a special Medicaid expansion that a lot of it's for the rural areas, then that's just a losing argument. And I think they just underestimate in the Senate how that's going to play out. It's not playing out very well. I mean, like you say, at times you have to have hard negotiations.
Yeah.
But when you're holding out a rural hospital like that, you're going to lose on that.
It's a life and death matter because if somebody has an issue and they're trying to get to the hospital and there's no Patrick Henry hospital in some of Bill Stanley's district, it could be the difference between 20 minutes and an hour and 50 minutes to get to the hospital. Especially if you have trauma or something like that, people could die. I really thought that was over the top. I kind of got what Dick was trying to do, but sometimes when you take the hammer out, it can come back and pop you in the head, and I think that's what happened. All right, I'm almost out of time.
I don't think it's comparable to Medicaid expansion either, because remember, that's basically taking 300,000 folks that are generally able-bodied.
Right.
So the Patrick Henry example, I don't think is analogous. I think they were trying to make them analogous.
Yeah.
And that's not selling. I think they're going to have to back off that position.
All right, I've got one more minute, Mr. Speaker. Your top priority, 2018 General Assembly. What is it?
Regulatory reform. I would say that Virginia is certainly not what Washington is. And I think, once again, the president has been a leader in that. But we've gotten worse, John, between barriers to professions, which millennials would, I think, very much like those type of, free market jobs, just regulatory reform across the board. We've just really sort of fallen in the middle of the pack. And we've got to become more business-friendly, small business-friendly in that area. That would be my top priority. And I've told the governor that, had some good discussions with him on that, and streamlining government. I think that's what people really want to see.
Mr. Speaker, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Always an honor to have you on. Thank you for being my basketball coach mentor on your jump press defense. Appreciate that. And we're going to go on from there. 58 past the hour. More information, go to kirkcox.com, kirkcox.com. Mr. Speaker, again, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, John.